Okay, so good evening, everybody. My name is Christina, and I am with Atlantic Institute. Tonight is our third Tour of Faith video, and our third Tour of Faith discussion. And we are meeting with Frances Worthington. She's with the Baha'i Faith, and I've been looking forward to this. I think I messaged Frances in January or February, and I asked her if she could kind of take us on a virtual tour of the different Baha'i temples and things that I know she has been to. So that's what we're going to be doing tonight. And so I'm very excited to see what she's put together for us. She said, I'm always a creative out of the box thinker. So
right.
I was like, oh yes.
Quick my box, I'm back in.
I wanted to do something different this year because most of us have been home and none of us have traveled. And I thought it'd be kind of great to travel a little bit virtually and kind of see everything, see through other people's pictures and things like that. So I'm very glad that she agreed and was able to do this. So if you'd like to, Frances, go ahead.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen, which will, I think some people will be able to choose whether they see partly screen and partly people. I'm going to end up only seeing what's on the screen, I think, while I'm sharing. So I'll just warn you about that now. So let's see if we can do this and optimize it. And well, that should, let's try that. All right. Oh, lovely. It doesn't want to do that. All right, we'll stop it and start over. I'll try it one more time.
No problem. Take your time, because I know sometimes this is not an easy thing to figure out.
Okay, there we go.
Hey.
And I see one more person's waiting to be admitted, but there we are. All right, so I hope everybody can hear me. You can always yell out if you have to, and I'll be able to hear you, but I probably won't answer questions till the end. So welcome, everybody. It was good to see your faces at the beginning. So welcome to the 2021 World Tour of Baha'i Houses of Worship. So I'll tell you just a tiny bit about the Baha'i Faith first, in case you don't know. The Baha'i Faith is an independent world religion practiced throughout the world by more than 5 million people of nearly every nationality and ethnic background. So Baha'is believe that we all belong to one human race, that all religions share a common source and aim, and that the long-awaited era of peace promised by God in the world's sacred scriptures is now within reach. We view the chaos of today as part of the difficult, but ultimately rewarding process of giving birth to a more just and peaceful society. So Baha'is believe that throughout human history, God has revealed himself and his teachings to humanity through a series of divine messengers who stretch back beyond recorded time. They include Abraham, Moses, Krishna, Buddha, Zoroaster, Jesus, Muhammad, and more. But we only have a few of the symbols on the screen. Baha'u'llah, who announced his mission in 1863, is recognized by Baha'is as the most recent messenger. So Baha'is would understand that each divine messenger brings a revelation that's suited to a certain era. Each provides spiritual education as well as necessary social laws. So some of the teachings of Baha'u'llah that speak directly to the problems of our age include elimination of all forms of prejudice, the equality between women and men, the harmony of science and religion, spiritual solutions to economic problems, universal education, and the independence of each country, plus an international council to uphold world peace. Another principle given by Baha'u'llah is the importance of fostering harmony and respect among the religions of the world. So with this in mind, we offer our profound thanks to the Atlantic Institute for hosting the Tour of Faith. It's something they've been doing for a while, and it's always been very interesting. So the quotation from the Baha'i writings that Baha'is like to bring up when we talk about why we are interested in interfaith dialogue is, "O people, consort with the followers of all religions in a spirit of friendliness and fellowship." So as a tangible demonstration of the belief that we were all created by God and that religion should be a source of harmony rather than contention, Baha'u'llah asked Baha'is to build houses of worship. These are open every day so that people of all faiths and backgrounds may enter and use them as places for personal prayer or meditation. When a program is held within a house of worship, it contains only the sacred scriptures of the world's religions, whether spoken or sung by a choir. There are no pulpits, no sermons, and no rituals held within a Baha'i house of worship. And this is what Baha'u'llah said: build ye houses of worship throughout the lands in the name of him who is the Lord of all religions. Then with radiance and joy, celebrate therein the praise of your Lord, the most compassionate. So somebody say something? No, all right. So in Arabic, which I don't read, but you might, you never know. We'll admit whoever that is. In Arabic, the name for a Baha'i house of worship is Mashriq al-Ashkar, which means dawning place of the remembrance of God. So Baha'is houses of worship offer a haven for contemplating spiritual reality and the meaning of existence. And Baha'i houses of worship, also referred to as Baha'i temples, have 9 sides with 9 doors, a symbolic welcome to every faith and nationality to enter and worship God without any denominational or sectarian restrictions. And they're designed to let natural light illuminate the interior during the day. And here's the Arabic calligraphy of Ya Baha'u'llah, which means, O thou glory of glories. And it's at the center of the interior dome of all Baha'i houses of worship. So the very first Baha'i house of worship, beginning our tour, was built in Turkmenistan in 1902 through 1908. Then it was expropriated by Soviet authorities in 1928, and after being damaged by an earthquake, was demolished in 1963. So as the first Baha'i house of worship, you can really see the influence of Islam, which was at that point the major religion in Turkmenistan. And Baha'is from Iran had fled to Turkmenistan because of persecution. And of course, most of them had been Muslims before becoming Baha'i. So that was the architecture that influenced this. The unusual thing, of course, is that it has 9 sides, which no mosque would have. So this is sort of a transition house of worship, in my mind, between really using the architecture around you as the inspiration and then jumping off into something new.
It's so pretty, I will just say.
Wasn't it? Yeah, I wish we could still see it.
Yeah.
The second Baha'i house of worship was built in Wilmette, Illinois. Now, this is the son of Baha'u'llah in the picture here. He laid the cornerstone, which you can see at the bottom of the photograph, in 1912. But construction was delayed by World War I and then World War II. So the temple was finally completed in 1953. And this is what it looks like if you go to Wilmette, Illinois, just outside of Chicago. But we'll hope that winter is finally over there. I think it is. And that it looks more like this. So let's go into this one just a little bit. Go up the steps here and take a look inside for a minute. And you can see that it's meant as a quiet, meditative place with this beautiful concrete tracery on the walls.
Wow.
The building's majestic dome represents the oneness of God and symbolizes the divine love and assistance that shelters all of humanity. The ribs of the dome come together like hands clasped in prayer. Symbols of the world's great religions can be found in the ornamentation of the temple's pillars, including the Christian cross, the Star of David, the star and crescent moon of Islam, the hooked cross of Hindu, Buddhist, and ancient Native American traditions, and the 9-pointed star of the Baha'i faith.
So this is just kind of an odd thing, which was that in 1938, some of you may know this, but I didn't before I started researching this program. The United States, of course, was still mired in the Great Depression, and air transport companies, which were still fairly new, they were developing but struggling to stay financially afloat. So to help the airlines and promote airmail service, there was a nationwide public relations campaign And it was called the National Airmail Week, took place in May of 1938, well before the Baha'i Temple in Wilmette was finished. But each town was encouraged to make a special stamp to use on anything airmailed from its post office. And this is what the town of Wilmette chose. So even though the temple at that point was not finished, they thought it was good enough to put on a stamp. So I, however, don't happen to remember this week. Now, before we go any further, let's consider a question that some of you might have, which is, what is the difference between a Baha'i house of worship and a Baha'i center? Because we have a Baha'i center here in Greenville, but we don't have a Baha'i house of worship. So let's look at what the differences are. So basically, a Baha'i center, like the one here in Greenville, hosts administrative functions. It is the place where a local spiritual assembly, which is the governing body of Baha'is, meets and has its offices. It can also be a place where Baha'is hold a monthly community gathering that combines devotions, community consultation, and fellowship. Weddings might be held there, as well as study classes. And there are no guidelines for how a center should be constructed or when it should be open. So if a Baha'i center has enough room, it may allow other organizations to meet there too. Now here in Greenville, the board of directors of the Interfaith Forum had its monthly meetings at the Baha'i Center for several years. And so did several other groups, including 2 interfaith book clubs. And we don't know, of course, what's going to happen now that the pandemic is waning. But here's some pictures from a pre-pandemic potluck and party at the Greenville Baha'i Center. Now, what about a house of worship? A house of worship is a gathering place open every day where people of all religions and backgrounds are invited to come and sit, pray, meditate, and worship God. There's no pulpit or altar, although there can be a lectern and maybe a microphone too. Only the holy scriptures of a religion are read aloud in the house of worship. Scriptural readings and prayers may be sung by a choir, but no musical instruments are played inside. No sermons, no ritualistic ceremonies, no photos, statues, no images. I think you get the idea. It's a quiet place. Most houses of worship host a daily interfaith devotional. And then for other programs, an auditorium or other facility can be built into the foundation of a temple or in a nearby building. So that can be the place for public talks, educational programs, concerts, and similar events. So after the temple in Wilmette, Baha'is around the world gradually built a house of worship on every continent. So the next one after Wilmette was in Africa, in Kampala, Uganda, near Lake Victoria. So we're going to get on our airplane and go right over. It was dedicated in 1961. And just to remind you where Uganda is, I'm sure you all knew, but just in case, Africa is a big place. Now, Kampala is a big, busy city of 1.5 million people now, but the temple, luckily, is on a quiet hill outside of town.
I come to this temple because to me it's like a magnet that I feel I have to visit every time to regenerate my spiritual energy and everything to do with the development of the soul. So I come here for prayers, I come here to meditate, to think about my inner life.
So a continental house of worship in Sydney, Australia was also dedicated in 1961, just a few months after the one in Uganda. And this one, which always looks like an alien that's just come to Earth, I think, this is for the European continent. It was built in Germany in 1964. But I love the inside. There are 540 diamond-shaped windows to let the light in. Because as I mentioned earlier, Baha'i houses of worship are all illuminated by natural light during the day. And this is Panama, 1972, the house of worship for Central America. And then Samoa in 1984. This is an island temple, but it's dedicated to serving all the Pacific Island countries as though they belong to a single continent. 1986, we're getting a lot, going around the world pretty fast here, aren't we? The Indian subcontinent. This one is in New Delhi, and it's affectionately called the Lotus Temple because it looks like a white lotus rising from the pond. We actually visited there, and we were told, and we could see because we were in line, that there are 10,000 visitors a day on most days. A group of 200 to 500 enters at a time, and then is allowed about 15 quiet minutes to sit in contemplation. Shoes are taken off before entering, and you can find them afterwards. It's amazing. We visited in 2007, and we were stunned by its quiet interior beauty. And the chair seats are marble because it's such a hot climate. So the air conditioning is only just a bit of cooling that comes from water air being drawn across the 9 reflecting pools that you saw. So it doesn't take a lot of electricity to cool this building. And then the outside air is allowed in too. So, and the marble seats mean that it's pretty cool, even when it's quite warm outside. But it's stunning the number of visitors who come just for the chance to sit for a few minutes. But you can see that the inside holds a lot of people, and it's built so that it can be very quiet even when people are making slight noises. Now, 2016, the Baha'i Temple of South America in Santiago, Chile was dedicated. And this was the last continental house of worship. And actually it won the Royal Architectural Institute of Canada's International Prize for Innovation in Architecture because of the way that it was built. So let's look at it, the way it was designed. It's actually based somewhat on some traditional buildings in Chile that were built out of clay, and some of them were rounded. And so it takes that as an inspiration. And then at night, of course, it's illuminated and made so that the lights shine through these panels, which are actually a special kind of glass.
Wow, very cool.
Yeah, and if you look at it from above, it's also quite interesting because it does have 9 reflecting ponds going around the building, but you don't really think that at first. But when you count them, you know, there's 1, and then there's 7 of these little swoops. Oh. And that makes 8. And then there's this long one, which is 9. And so they've twisted these 9 gardens and 9 reflecting pools in a very interesting way around the building itself. So as I mentioned, the exterior is faced with cast glass panels that were developed exclusively for this project. It took 4 years to develop the right formula for the 1,129 panels. So it was a real feat of architecture, I have to say. I did not go to the dedication. A friend of mine did. She's here on the top left with some of the local Baha'is from Chile. And you may be wondering who's sitting up high. You may have noticed in some of the other temples that there seems to be a balcony or something like that. That's for a choir. So because, as I mentioned before, only voices are heard in the Baha'i temple singing, there are no instruments, but often the temple is built with a special place for a choir so that the acoustics will be the best possible. So it's not that they're high and mighty people, it's that they have to be of service and sing. And looking up toward the dome, God is the all-glorious there shining through. So after the dedication of the final continental temple, then various countries with large number of Baha'is began building national or regional houses of worship. So in time, as funds allow, each house of worship will be surrounded by humanitarian, educational, and charitable institutions to serve the needs of the local population. So the idea is to join spiritual insight with practical action. And the institutions will serve people of all faiths and backgrounds. The possibilities include schools, hospitals, orphanages, shelters, and homes for the elderly. So for instance, in Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, a national house of worship is currently under construction on a hill overlooking the city. That's because in the last few years, increasing numbers of people there have joined the Baha'i faith. So the country's total number of Baha'is is about 100,000 now. And the temple itself is going to have a very interesting design. Sort of looks like weaving. And that's intentional. As one of the people there explained, in Papua New Guinea, where there are more than 800 languages and as many tribes, the house of worship represents unity for all the people of the country. The design of the temple, which is based on traditional weaving patterns, is itself symbolic of unity. This art form is found everywhere in the country, from baskets created for special occasions or use in everyday life to mats that are woven for family and friends. So this guy was explaining that weaving calls to mind how we come together among our diverse backgrounds and customs. So I think it's going to be a very lovely place to sit, to pray, and to think. Now, moving to another continent, the other country that is currently building a national temple is the Democratic Republic of Congo. The design was released a few months ago, and the site is on the outskirts of Kinshasa. So the African architects were inspired by artworks, structures, and natural features of the area, including, as you see on the left photograph, traditional roofs made of palm leaves. So the building that will be built is a blend of historic architecture and also modern construction methods. Now we're going down to local houses of worship. We've looked at continental, national. So the very first local house of worship was built in Battambang, Cambodia, and dedicated in 2017. This is what it looks like from above. And as is true for all Baha'i temples, there's enough land around this one for the addition of humanitarian institutions. There's already a dormitory for volunteers, an office building, and an auditorium. So I don't know which other buildings they've planned for next. So just for fun, I looked up the Battambang Baha'i House of Worship on TripAdvisor, and sure enough, there was a review by somebody who was just visiting, not a member of the Baha'i faith. I don't know where he's from, but I thought it was amusing what he said, that this was by far the highlight of Battambang for me. In a land of beautiful temples that are hundreds and thousands of years old, this was the only one I encountered where tourism didn't seem to be at the forefront of its purpose. Nobody asking for money. The roads were not riddled with places to eat and people to take your money. I can see he's concerned about money. If you're looking for a really serene place to meditate and pray or pay homage to the divine, however you may describe it, this temple is for you. So in case you were thinking about taking a trip. So this celebration had it both, quiet prayers inside and something really lively outside. And then there's another local house of worship, and this one is in Matunda Soy, Kenya, dedicated just this past May 2021. There are about 500,000 Baha'is in Kenya. Now, as you can see on the roof, the design incorporates a diamond pattern that's a familiar motif in Kenyan culture. The roofs and the walls use slate and stone from nearby quarries. So again, it's kind of interesting architecture, reflecting local conditions and local ideas. So let's take a look at Africa, because Africa right now has 3 interesting places. It has the Continental House of Worship in Uganda, the top center. On the right, you see the local House of Worship in Matunda Soy, Kenya, and on the left is a national House of Worship for the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Although it's built right on the border, you can see in Kinshasa, which is on the border between the Democratic Republic of the Congo and just the Republic of the Congo. So if you'd like to just take a drive to see all of them, it's only going to take you 2,000 miles, and Google says about 63 hours, not counting sleep. Yeah. You know, Africa's a big country. I just thought I'd remind us how big Africa is. It's large. This is how the other countries fit inside Africa. I think we forget that sometime. It also has 1/5 of the world's Baha'is.
Wow.
So yeah, another local house of worship it's just getting ready to be constructed, really, is on the island of Tena in Vanuatu, which is a country consisting of a chain of islands between Fiji and Australia. So let me circle that. So Vanuatu is about 1,000 miles from the coast of Australia. So there we have it, out in the middle of what seems to be nowhere, right, from our point of view. But it is somewhere for the people who live there, including all these people. So now in the early stages of the design process, local residents, chiefs, and other tribal leaders, not just Baha'is, were gathered in order to submit ideas for the structure of the central edifice. And they gathered for meetings to discuss its purpose and the implications for their society, because the Baha'is wanted it to feel as though it belonged to everyone, even though it was being built by the Baha'is. So when the design was complete, local officials attended the groundbreaking ceremony. And here you can see the foreign minister and the president of the Malvatu Maori National Council of Chiefs. One has a shovel and the other guy is driving a kakel, a traditional wooden spade, into the soil. So they're just in the early stages of construction right now. The 9 wings of the roof are shaped like the deep valleys that mark the terrain of this island, which is a volcanic island. And the inside, well, the walls of the house of worship are going to be constructed using stakes and plated reeds, with some draws on the local architecture of the region. So you'll get let in the natural light, which I've talked about before, and also this will admit ocean breezes. Now, don't let this idea fool you. Don't be fooled by the idea of the reed walls. The basic underpinnings of the building are steel beams. So again, this is a building that's quite interesting because it incorporates both sort of low maintenance and no electricity much needed to keep it cool, and it can be repaired after hurricanes, or I guess they're called cyclones in the Pacific. Typhoons, there you go, not cyclones. So you can see that this is going to be a fascinating building when it's done. I can't wait. I'm not sure I want to travel all the way there to see it. I'm also intrigued by this one. This is a new design. It was for a local house of worship in Bihar Sharif, India. It was chosen in 2020. Due to the pandemic, construction has not started as far as I know, but it's quite fascinating. Now I'll show you just a couple of the other designs that were submitted, because the Baha'is put out a call to different architectural firms, gave them parameters, and these were a couple of designs that weren't chosen. And I'm quite happy they weren't, actually. So I don't like them. I think one looks like a fortress and the other is, I don't know. It looks like a ball of yarn that's gone wrong.
I was going to say one looks like a pineapple, kind of somewhat.
Yeah, pineapple. Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
And that one, yeah, that one looks kind of very interesting.
I know the other one's like it like belongs in a some kind of awful game.
Yeah. These are like so interesting to look at. We had 2 questions that came up, and I just thought I might ask them to you now.
Okay, we'll do it while we're looking at this. So ask away.
Yeah, because Gail, because it's kind of, oh, this is cool. Where they have the humanitarian buildings located. Gail was wondering, how do they pay for for all these special buildings?
How what?
Gail was wondering, how do they pay for all these special buildings?
But only Baha'is contribute to the Baha'i funds. So for the humanitarian buildings, I actually don't know if they would accept some contributions from local government, since it would serve the local population or not. But for the houses of worship, only Baha'is pay for that. It's our gift to the world.
Gotcha. Okay.
That's a good question. I haven't really thought about the other. I was just assuming Baha'is paid for all the structures, but it could be that if a school is going to serve a local population, that other organizations could contribute to that school, because it won't be a religious school. It won't be teaching the Baha'i faith.
Right. It's there to benefit the community.
Yeah. So is there another question as well?
She was just saying, I guess that Africa was, it's a continent. So that's why it's so huge with all these different little countries in it. And so all of the, all of the places that we were looking at were all in different countries throughout this huge continent.
It is.
So, yeah.
She's exactly right.
Yes.
So this is what the idea of what the temple in Bihar Sharif will look like when it's done. And again, it's drawing on local patterns. So these are patterns found in the Madhubani folk art of Bihar and the region's long architectural heritage. It has a repeating design, a pattern of arches that rise up from the 9 base arches. Openings at the center of the dome and in each ring of arches will reduce the weight of the building, which seems like a good idea. And it will also allow the light to filter in. And the bricks will be made of local earth. And interestingly, then this will be the seating, which will be marble, but won't have any adornment at all. And of course, as with the Lotus Temple in New Delhi and the one in Battambang, Cambodia, people will remove their shoes before entering, which allows for this kind of simple and very practical seating. So anybody can come in while it's open and just sit, meditate, pray, whatever suits.
Yeah, and it also keeps it quite clean. I think sometimes
yes, it makes a lot of sense in those countries.
Yes, it does help.
So you may have a question about like how many other sites in the world have already been chosen as places where Baha'i houses of worship will be built. And so let's just look at some that have already been chosen, but nothing has been constructed yet. So Baha'is are planning ahead, and others might be added to this. So if a local community had a country had an extraordinary number of Baha'is, they might say, well, we're ready. So we would like to add our names to this list, and that might happen. So we don't really know, exactly what and where will be the next one after the ones that I've shown you. But this is something everybody can make, right? So there are also edible houses of worship. So some Baha'is make edible houses of worship just for fun out of cookies or cake or whatever, to celebrate the Baha'i New Year or for other festivals. So I just thought you'd enjoy this. A friend of mine made the one with her children, made the one that you see on the right, and then she took it out to show that it didn't quite measure up to the real thing.
That was cute though.
Isn't it cute? Okay, so all right, so that's the end of
anything you do with children is good.
So I'll stop the sharing and come back to here and see if there are any questions or comments or
yes. So let's just go with, Gail was just saying all of the buildings are beautiful, each in its own way. When is the Baha'i New Year and how was it determined?
Okay, yeah, Baha'i New Year is in March on the first day of spring, as determined by what is the first day of spring in Tehran, Iran, which is where Baha'u'llah was born. So that shifts slightly from year to year. You know, spring can actually be on the 20th, 21st, 22nd, 19th. It can shift a little bit. So it does vary for us slightly. There was another part of the question, or was that it? No.
That was her question. Okay, so Trevor.
Hi, Trevor. There's a friend in Colorado. I haven't seen him for a while. All right.
Okay.
Good to hear from you.
So let me find Trevor up here, because I've actually learned sometimes it's easier. There you are. Do you mind if I just bring you in here for a second? And since you had asked this very good question, that would you like to ask your question?
Sure, I'll simplify it. So the Baha'is believe that there's temples, and then Christians believe that after Jesus died, there's no reasons for any temples anymore. There's two passages in Acts 7 and Acts 17. It basically says there's no more need for temples. How is God approving of the Baha'i temples when God says there's no more need for temples?
Well, you know, as you know, Trevor, Baha'is believe that Baha'u'llah is the spiritual return of Jesus. And what did Jesus say? I have many things to tell you, but you cannot bear them now. Howbeit, when he, the Spirit of truth, is come, he will lead you unto all truth. So we would say that Baha'u'llah fulfills the prophecies of Jesus. And so his word is the word for now. You know, that the social laws change over time. Divorce laws, food laws, housing laws, marriage laws, those all change with every messenger of God. So that would be how we would see it. Doesn't make us right, just makes us how we see it.
Yeah, but Christian would say there's no more need for any more temples at all, specifically referring to those two verses and probably others.
So then do you go to a physical church or temple?
I go to a church. It is a physical place, but I would say the church is the body of believers that all believe in Jesus and are forgiven of their sins.
Yep, that's wonderful. Yeah, Baha'is are just concerned right now with bringing all the people of different religions together in a spirit of peace. So this is our gift, to let different people come together with no agenda beyond contemplating the spiritual.
And I would say there's a difference between like a church and an actual temple.
Yes, it's quite different. That's exactly right. So we call these Baha'i houses of worship.
Right, and I think the intent for the house of worship in the Baha'i faith is universal for everybody. And
Yeah,
so that's one of their major structures in the Baha'i faith is that everybody is welcome, no matter what your faith is. So I think that would be where they see the need to have these houses of worship available for the community to all come together. I don't know if you've ever been to a gathering of the Baha'i that like we have in the past. Sometimes our tour of faith has been there as well. And it is so very neat to see the diverse slice of life in, you know, people from all different walks and backgrounds and all different clothing and different attire and everything like that. And it is kind of refreshing in a way to see that. So, I just thought it was very interesting, just to point out, because I find it very, very neat to see. And a couple people that were saying, I guess, like sometimes in the Christian faith, there's building of churches and cathedrals, and then that sometimes we need symbols, whether or not, because it's part of, some people need symbols at some point as part of being human. That some people feel like they need to have this stuff to help them. So then
we need a quiet place for the children, don't we? I don't know how you do it, Christina. She's got lots of helpers.
One more thought came to my mind.
Normally it's much easier than this.
The temple was used in the old times for Jesus or for animals to be sacrificed and for us to gain forgiveness. But since Jesus is the one that died on the cross and forgives all of our sins, there's no need for temples in the future because Jesus is the one that forgives us.
Sure, that's a valid point of view. So I'm not, I'm not out to convince you of anything. I'm only out to take you on the world tour, and I think you got it right. So,
yeah.
And I think Baha'is don't get hung up on the words. We could call it Baha'i structures for worship. We could call them, you know, or Baha'i structures for coming and contemplating, or I mean, temple for Baha'is, temple does not have a connection to a certain religion. So we don't think that it's Jewish, or we, you know, mosque tends to be with Islam. You know, sometimes we get so attached to the words that we don't get into the spiritual reality of things. So I don't know, you know, it's lots of interesting questions in religion.
Yes, and I think sometimes that's why there's many different faiths, and you know, as Christians, there's a certain belief. There's Baha'i, there's a certain belief. In Islam, there's a certain belief. In Judaism, there's a certain belief. So that would be that there's just differences in some of those. Next question. Thank you very much, Trevor. I appreciate you asking your question. I had a quick question from Shayla. She was saying, is there a temple in Israel?
No, there is a site in Israel where a house of worship might be built someday. Right now, there is not one, because there are hardly, because Israel is a Jewish state. And so at this point, I think that—
You might say, what is in Haifa?
But yeah, what is in Haifa is the shrine of the Bab, who is the precursor to Baha'u'llah. And then just outside of Haifa is the shrine of Baha'u'llah, where he died. So there are Baha'i buildings in Haifa, but not a Baha'i house of worship.
Yes. Nikki said, good question. Francis can explain why. She said there is a shrine in Israel on Mount Carmel. It is in a house of worship, but it's open to all visitors of all faiths. It's surrounded by gardens.
Yeah, the gardens are open to visitors, and it's like the jewel of the area there. In terms of tourism, they people visit from all over.
Yes, yes. I was just trying to read through the notes. So Gail was saying, I think Gail was just commenting. Oh, there's like 40 messages.
Yeah, people can, I don't know if people can unmute themselves, but you're welcome.
Well, I just have to read first to find out. Like, so Gail was saying, since although I do not follow Baha'i, I believe that if there is a divine being, he or she would not care how people choose to believe, nor what they choose to enter to perform their method of worship. Shayla was saying, don't have to compare with other believers as they are for the contemporary society. Then Sue was saying houses of worship are gathering places for all people to congregate as community. In English, it's described as the dawning place of the mention of God. All very, very
important. You know, we might say that it isn't, in a Baha'i house of worship, there is no service or no orientation toward any particular religion. If you are Christian and you come in and you're bowing your head, you may be praying to Jesus. If you are Muslim and you come in, you might be praying to God, to Allah. You know, you might be thinking about Muhammad. Baha'is don't care which direction you're coming from. This is just a quiet, sacred place to sit down, pray quietly, you know, not aloud. And then when there are services, they are interfaith services, or they're just readings from one religion for a specific purpose, but it's not aimed at any particular religion. This is a place of peace, whatever your background.
Right. Yes, that's what I understand as well. And I think what I get is it's like all are welcome and all are equal, and all are so it's everybody can use it. So that way there's not like, if you come to a different area and there's no place for you to go worship, if you're Muslim, I mean, you can go there and you can go pray and you can feel a connection to God. Or if you have no place to go work, if you're new to an area or visiting and you want to go and worship or say, give prayers or something like that, you have a place there.
And also, I think in local communities, as more local Baha'i houses of worship are built, what it does is offer neutral ground, so that if your whole city or your town is planning a project of some kind, people from different religions could come together to pray before they go somewhere to consult. So they would be praying for God's guidance, no matter their religion, and no matter that maybe outside they've been leery of people of other religions, but because they decided to work on a project together, then instead of going to a place of worship that's connected to a specific religion, they can come to this neutral ground and all can pray without the feeling that they are somehow betraying their own religion, because the houses of worship are not about that. So it's an interesting concept.
Yes,
It's
yes,
just,
yes, very true. I know growing up, I always thought if I went to a different church that like the lightning was going to come in and strike me dead. Kind of like that. So you don't have to feel like you can, you don't have to feel like that.
We hope that's true. So
Right. I'm still alive. I still did okay.
Good.
When we were talking with Trevor before, you mentioned something interesting though. You mentioned that so in Christianity there is a waiting for Jesus to come again, and so you mentioned something with the Baha'i that that you believe that was already happened.
You got it.
Okay, with Baha'u'llah.
It takes a while, year or two, and then you'll be fine.
I'm getting there. So that's very interesting because I don't know if other faiths believe that. Is there other faiths? I'm trying to wrap my mind around that.
It's a big question.
Islam.
Yes.
Right.
Well,
right.
They accept Jesus and Moses.
Well, but they don't think Jesus has returned. John was saying, well, in Islam, of course, they accept the previous messengers of God, and they are also waiting for the return of Christ. But yeah, Baha'is are saying, well, guess what? It happened. So we could be the lunatic friend. You never know.
Yeah, no, I just find that interesting because I think everybody's kind of like almost in a holding pattern or a waiting pattern for this return of Jesus, and then for things to be different.
Yeah, we think it's
right. And so then for the Baha'i faith, it would be like that this is what there is.
That's right. We're living in the judgment day when everything is sort of up for consideration. And we would say that the promises that are in the Old and New Testament and in the Quran have been fulfilled. But it doesn't mean that we think you ought to believe the same thing. We just like to tell people what we do believe.
Right. No, I you know what? I think in all of the tours of faith I've done with Baha'i, I think I missed that for some reason.
It's a big concept. It's not something easy to hear. And then it's like, no, certainly that couldn't be true, right?
Well, I was just like, oh, wait. I just don't think I didn't think that. And then Sue said that's why there are 9 doors, 9 gardens, 9 fountains, 9 paths leading to the same one auditorium under one dome-shaped roof. The basic design was revealed by Baha'u'llah to signify the unity of God, the unity of religion, and the unity of humanity. Yes. And I know that there has been that banner that hung in the Baha'i, I'm lost. I'm like, do I say Baha'i Temple in Greenville? I liked that one that had all paths lead to God, and it had
the banner that's up in the front row, right? So we have sort of the sun representing God. We don't think the sun is God. This is not
right, but it's for banner purposes for us to get the point across.
Yeah, that there's one source of light. God is the source of spiritual energy, and from him have come all the messengers of God. Sort of like chapters in a book or teachers in school. You know, you learn something different in every grade. First grade, you might not learn calculus. That might come a little later.
Right.
For most schools. So the idea is that it's progressive revelation. As we grow and change as a human race, so do the messengers give us more information. And that's why each messenger of God promises that this is not, something else is going to happen. Jesus is going to return. The 5th Buddha is going to come. Every religion has this promise that there is a time when a messenger of God will come whose purpose will be to unify the world by bringing all peoples together. So we would think that Baha'u'llah is that, and we're living in this time when the prophecies of all the religions are coming true. We have this possibility for a world civilization. In fact, we have a world civilization. We just haven't figured out how to make it peaceful yet.
Right, which would then bring about creating some of these places of worship to bring people together peacefully.
Right. So our gift toward helping people recognize the possibility for peace are these houses of worship where anybody can enter, not with the idea that they're going to be converted to something else, but with the idea that they can contemplate really the deepest questions of their inmost being. What am I here for? What is my idea about God? You know, what am I going to do with my life? Whatever your real spiritual quest is, it's a quiet place to come and meditate. Although in India, it tends to be a busier place than everybody would have expected. So
Right. Yes. Like they perhaps need to build too. So and then I like the component that's working on being added of all of the different humanitarian needs of the area as well, which is, you know, what it amazes me is some of those towns that they've built these temples in, they are very busy areas, yet there is quite an area carved out for this, for the structure to be put in place with the reflecting ponds, with, you know, that there is the plenty of space there that you can be in all of the busyness of a city and step into here and have peace and harmony. You know, I find that very interesting. And then just the even the design work of like the dome shaped of the different, all the different panels, it's just so very interesting. And definitely you can see that it's designed to be peaceful and stuff like that. So Gail was saying, to be facetious, do other people believe Jesus has already returned? And I know you said remember the Moonies. I don't know who the Moonies are. I don't know anything about that, but I think in my 8 years of doing interfaith work, it's kind of like everybody, I respect the fact that everybody has their own belief. And I think it's good to have a belief, is what I've always come to. So,
well, Christina, you've always been a good moderator for all different points of view. It's good. She's been learning and thinking and all these years about different things. And I know your background, you've changed. You know, I think everybody who participates in interfaith activities changes to some extent, because you begin to respect other people and you think, isn't that fascinating? You know, that idea, I don't care that it belongs to this person who is this, it still illuminates my belief and makes it even more beautiful. And so I'm so appreciative of all these paths.
May I comment?
Sure.
Yeah. What you said about that peace and serenity and security, I think of it as in each Baha'i home, because what we haven't talked about is that although we do have houses of worship, that's not really where the Baha'is would generally congregate. We would come in each other's homes and we would meet, you know, in some places like Vanuatu, my understanding is that they meet for worship in somebody's home every morning, you know, like on the way to work, you stop at, you know, Auntie June's house and you say your prayers every day, you know, and it's a secure place where anyone can come in to somebody's home who is a Baha'i and be welcomed and be able to worship and to devote, you know, even inviting people who are your neighbors who are not necessarily declared Baha'is who are contributing to the Baha'i funds. So that's the only difference often, is that you have community members who are there participating in all of the activities. If they have children, they can come to children's classes. You know, we don't ask them, you know, that you need to sign a card and declare to be a Baha'i before you bring your children to our children's classes or whatever activities we have. So.
Mm-hmm. My children have been in every different type of faith, religion, and temple, and all different VBSs and classes and things. Recently, they went to the Mennonite VBS to have that experience, you know, and I think it's been great to expose your children to all these different things, because they're going to find their own path when they get older, and to teach them some inclusion and teach them some understanding of the other people, and other people have different faiths, and other people have different beliefs, and for them to learn why they have their belief and why those people have their belief. My girls stood outside the Mennonite and they were like, nobody has a purse, everybody has a braid, and they were just fascinated that how everybody looked, like everybody's in a dress, and I said, yes, I mean, there's modesty, and it was just explaining all the differences for them to understand. It's just so very interesting. So Anybody have any other questions? Because I mean, it's 8. I mean, I could probably keep talking for a good 30 minutes.
No, we should probably let everybody leave.
But I figure we've been here now an hour, and you know, I'm trying to keep everything about an hour. So let me unspotlight us, and thank you so very much, Frances, for putting this together.
Sure, I thought it was great. You know, when you first asked me, I thought, well, that's interesting. Okay, sure.
Yeah.
So it really pushed me into actually. I had not myself looked at all the architecture around the world, so I learned a lot too. So thanks.
Yeah, so I thoroughly appreciate it because and I will say you did a phenomenal job putting it together. I loved the music in the beginning and the curtain being pulled back, and I just knew, yes, you would be able to create a wonderful slideshow because that is just you.
Just to wake people up who are already sleeping, you know.
Yes. So I thank you. And if you guys would all like to unmute yourselves, you can. We'd love to hear you say thank you and good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
And just to remind you guys, tomorrow night is learning of Congregation Beth Israel with Rabbi Marco up in Greenville. If you can be in person, you're welcome to come and be in person. They ask for you to wear a mask, especially if you've not been vaccinated, but if you have been vaccinated, you can, as an option. And to remember social distancing. And then I will remind you on Sunday at 2, we have an appointment with a tour guide in Israel or Jerusalem. I'm trying real hard to remember saying Jerusalem.
It's a lot. You've got a lot coming up this month. I know. I looked at it and thought, oh, I do want to come to a couple of them. I haven't quite worked out my schedule yet. But thanks again for doing all this.
Yes.
I think it was a great idea.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was fun. All right, you guys.
Okay.
Okay. Trevor, it was good to see you.
You as well.
Colorado.